Hello, all. Welcome to my Curiosity Chat with Darja Kossmann. Darja is an internationally experienced marketing professional and joins us from Austria. Our topic is nonverbal communications. And I want to share a little bit about her before we start chatting so you can understand how I got interested in talking about this topic with her, and also my desire to acknowledge her curiosity about the topic that sort of emerged through her experiences, and just go deeper with her into the topic. So Darja's career led her to 7 countries on 3 continents. And thanks to this experience, she speaks 4 languages and understands 3 more languages. That is fabulous. And a few fun facts about her family. Each member of the family was born in a different country. Darja in Slovenia, her husband in Poland, her first son in Germany, right? And the second son in Austria. And she now lives with her husband in Austria, and the boys are in the United States. And their international life goes on. And with that, I welcome Darja Kossmann to the chat. And thank you very much for your time and your generosity, Darja.
Thank you, Shireen, for inviting me to your chat and for this great introduction. And as far as I know, you also have an international background.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, my life took me also to very different places that I would have never imagined, as beginning with Turkey, where I'm originally from, right? And then Germany, where I lived in my
Oh,
childhood, and later on also in my career, the US, and yeah, just to give our audience a little bit background about ourselves, Switzerland and in the UK, and this too got me interested in languages. I speak 3 languages, and I got very interested in quite a few other. I wouldn't say that I understand, but all of them, definitely some.
very impressive.
Yeah. So and just like you, I got very interested about nonverbal communication. One can't help but get interested. How would you
Mm.
identify the elements of nonverbal communication?
Look, nonverbal communication is really very, very important as it can convey a wealth of information, often more than words can do itself.
Mhm.
And things like body language, facial expressions, gestures,
Mhm.
tonality, this all can communicate nuances and emotions that words usually cannot capture fully. And it plays an important role in personal interactions because this can really impact how the words will be understood or perceived by other persons, especially when we talk about different languages. How do you think? What do you think about nonverbal communication?
Yes, I think you summarized very well. This is what I understand as well. And what was very interesting in my international life too, that nonverbal communication differs just like languages in different cultures and countries. I mean, there may be some similarities, but then there are definitely um,
Sure.
yeah, differences as well, which we want to talk about. What have you noticed with regards to differences in your experience?
Exactly, as you said, I think when you are in a different or foreign country, the most important first you think it's to learn their language so that you can communicate with them. But even more important is this nonverbal communication, because if you don't understand this nonverbal communication in the country, this can lead to conflicts because, as I said, they don't understand you correctly. This can be a barrier in communication. This can be also that you are perceived as a cultural insensitive person, and this can also have impact on your business potential in the country. But if you understand this nonverbal communication, this can avoid some culture pitfalls, I think. And I can give you also some examples from my life because I also had sometimes hard learnings on the way. And maybe I can start with Dominican Republic, a very interesting country. After a meeting, Yes, I was happy. I think, okay, the deal is done. They said yes. For me, coming from Europe, it's done. And then colleague of myself saw out my happiness and said, Daria, actually, this was no. And I said, how it's no if he said yes? I said, yo, in Dominican Republic, you will never hear the word no because people don't want to offend you. And it's very important that you observe how they are involved in the topic, their facial expressions, how many emotions they include in the conversations, and so on. So you can get five different ways of saying yes, and this can mean yes, maybe, and it goes to no. So this was
Mm.
really very interesting in the beginning to learn, because if you come from Europe, or I think in the States, yes is yes, no is no. So it's very straightforward. And in Dominican Republic, you really need to understand these expressions and emotions, and this nonverbal communication is very important. So another example maybe from Bulgaria. This was also very funny. Being in the country first weeks, and I took a taxi that she drove me home. Sitting in a taxi, explaining to the driver my direction to the home, and then I explained, and he made like this. I said, okay, I'll explain the second time. And he made like this. And then I asked him, what you don't understand? What is not clear? Which part of the way? And then he saw that I'm new in the country. And he said, look, when you are in Bulgaria, we have a different communication. So this means yes. And if you kick your head just back, it means no, which is totally vice versa what we know, because we say no like this and yes like this. And this is also nonverbal communication, which can be really very strange if you don't know, and can lead to a little bit complicated, because I was explaining many times, but then I realized, okay, I learned that it's a little bit different in Bulgaria. Then maybe another example from Kazakhstan. What was also interesting for me, which I'm not used in Europe, that people, to show their power or status in the society, they always show their material status. So before the meeting or so on, they want to show you which car they drive. So you will have on the table the keys of the car. They will show their watch, what they are wearing, or they will pay attention, or they will show you the dress, that everything is branded, and so on, which is actually not the case in Europe. This you will realize after the meeting in some small talks and so on. So this was different, this nonverbal communication for me. And at the beginning, which was really very strange, they are not shaking hands with women. So when you are greetings, usually I think also in the States and in Europe, you're used to man, woman, so you just shake the hand and that's it. And in Kazakhstan, this is not part of the culture. And for me, it was strange. And at the beginning, some really embarrassing moments, because I was just putting my hand, to shake the hand, and it stays in the middle.
Mm.
So, but then I saw that this has nothing to do with not appreciating women or respecting, but it's just a part of the culture. So these are
Mhm.
all topics which I mentioned before that you need to learn, and can be sometimes even more difficult than just learning the language from the textbooks.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
you have also some interesting examples from your life.
I do, and I realize how this can really impact almost trust, right?
Exactly.
It's unsettling, and it's like lost in translation, and it sort of supports the research that says uh, almost all of communication is nonverbal if we include the tone of voice and as such, and maybe 7% only is based
Exactly.
on words only, which is really interesting. And in my case, what I can add is earlier in my career, I was working with a colleague from Austria, and to unintentionally, we're also self-awareness is a very important learning, right?
Mm,
As we
mm,
it's just
mm,
our nonverbal behavior. So unintentionally, to show my enthusiasm, I kept walking into his cubicle, um, and heard then from other colleagues and from our manager that this was uncomfortable. And that's when I realized, to show my enthusiasm and curiosity, it might be just fine to use my words and my tone,
mm,
and I didn't have to reduce my distance to
mhm.
with him. And that was a really,
True.
a useful learning. With that, where do you see the future of nonverbal communication going? It's like we're all virtual now, and I'm just curious
Like we're
what.
now, right?
Yeah, like we're now, right? Now we're not going necessarily always to Kazakhstan, Bulgaria, or.
No. But this is exactly the beauty of this virtual communication. It's just exactly the future. I think in the nearest future we will get new way of communications also, which we will need to accept. But exactly, I always say the beauty of this is that we can connect like we are connecting now, and how quickly we can adapt on different way of communications. I think we all showed during the pandemic time, which I mean, also in your childhood, what we are doing now, we didn't know at all. Yeah. And now we are really connecting. I'm sitting in Austria, you're in the States, we see our faces. What is just the difference that we are, if you're not in person, you don't see the body language, right? And for me, in the pandemic time was also interesting because suddenly you need to learn presenting while sitting, not anymore standing. You need to pay attention more of facial expressions, not body language. And also this what we discuss now, these cultural differentiations, you just need to know to learn somehow, because you don't get them so easily via virtual platforms as you get them in personal communication. And with increasing of globalization which we have now, in this virtual communication, these cross-cultural differences will be even more important to understand them, because otherwise you can really very quickly go to a conflict or to a wrong conclusion in the discussion because you just don't understand the words correctly. As I said, for example, in Dominican Republic, for us yes would be yes, but actually it's not yes, it's no at the end. Yeah, and there is no deal. So in the future, I'm really curious the next steps which will come, especially with artificial intelligence. I think that this is really big potential, and we are all curious what will come. I think that we all show that we can pretty quickly accept new waves of communication, um, especially if we are forced to, as it was in the pandemic time, right? This
Yeah.
we really needed to do it immediately, and in all the areas will be this very interesting approaches. If we take education, virtual classes, if we take the medicine, telemedicine, how a doctor can show the empathy and emotions to the patient, because if you go personally to the doctor is totally different as if you discussed about your symptoms so virtually. So
Mm-hmm.
there are all areas, or for example, we are, I don't know how much you use this virtual assistants already, assistants or bots or whatever. There is also not much nonverbal communication with, I think, with the time, it should also be somehow I would say involved or added, because at the end of the day we are human beings, and this we have seen during pandemic time, that we cannot be closed just in one room or communicate just virtually. We need presence as well. That's why I'm so happy
Mm-hmm.
that at the end of the day now we have some hybrid communication combination, so that is not everything is just virtually, but we also can again meet with each other, especially for some brainstormings or
Mm-hmm.
where active participation is needed. This still, I think we are human beings, we need to communicate in person. But for such chats as we have now, this is a perfect this virtual platform that we can talk, we can discuss, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's also more sustainable. We don't need to fly now to another continent, right? To meet each other.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Virtual has definitely facilitated our lives in ways we could have not imagined before.
Exactly.
At the same time, what I'm hearing from you, it's becoming so important to be curious about nonverbal aspects of communication, because it is such a big part, as we know from personal experience, it is such a big part of communication. So not to get lost in translation, we really need to see what is happening on the other side of the screen,
Exactly.
right? Especially in medicine, as you say, like when where there's great empathy needed, for instance.
And there
Mm-hmm.
are areas and topics where you need to show more, or sometimes just a hug, to give a hug a person,
Mm.
or in some difficult situations you cannot do everything virtually. So that's why this combination is fine. But I think exactly as I said, with this artificial intelligence, there will be for sure some new waves which
Mm-hmm.
we most probably even cannot imagine now, like we couldn't imagine using PC and this virtual communication years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But this will help us for sure. So I will stay curious how this culture dynamic will goes on, because I'm also interested in this cross-cultural dynamics with the globalization, which now increased. And also I'm curious about these complex interactions between human and machines in communicative context. This will also be interesting how this will goes on in the future. So there are many areas where we need to stay curious. And regarding adaptation, as I said, I think that we all really prove very good in the last 2 years in the pandemic time, how quickly we adapt. And I'm used to say, either you go with the time or you go with the time. It's your
That's
choice.
right. It's your,
It's your
yeah,
choice.
yeah. Change is one thing that will not change.
Exactly. And we just need to, as I said, either you accept or you are just not in the game.
In conclusion, I would like to ask you, what were like what were two solutions or two ways for you, or one or two ways, right? Um, that you identified to learn more about nonverbal communication. I think we discussed this.
hmm So regarding nonverbal communication, I would really be more, especially if these are new cultures, it's important to connect really with local people immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and what is very interesting is also because also with the traveling, even if you don't move, it's so interesting to observe how local people communicate between each other. Then you can really very quickly learn nonverbal communication of this country,
Mm-hmm.
of this culture, because just speaking the language of the culture, you are not a part of the culture. But once you understand the nonverbal communication, you can say you also understand this nonverbal, the culture itself. One topic, another topic for sure. I'm even more after this chat interesting in nonverbal communication in virtual platforms, because this is totally different than in person. There are different tools which needs to be used, different analyses, and I would say also the third, although you say just two, also the third, it's I'm really curious what artificial intelligence will bring us, how
Mm-hmm.
to use the tools, how to adapt as soon as possible, and this will be also an interesting way to learn nonverbal communication in these new tools. And especially as you said at the beginning, our family is international. It's not for us is really a celebration when we see each other in person. So
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, especially with my sons, I communicate via virtual these platforms, either FaceTime or Sky or whatever. So that's why this emotional part and this nonverbal communication is even more important that it goes cross.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there
So
is curiosity which will stay in this area for sure.
I really appreciate your points. And one of the things the interculturalists actually noticed when the pandemic hit was how stereotyping increased through in virtual communication, how people jumped into conclusions or came with presumptions to communications so much more. So curiosity in the field is going to be very important. And one thing that I do want to add is to not be afraid of learning, not afraid or
Mm.
not resist learning and engage and practice. I would add that with regards to getting better about nonverbal communication. Would you agree?
Fully agree with you, because as you said, this will be more and more important, because the way of communication will be different,
Mm-hmm.
and as we are used now, and especially we are human beings, we need emotions, we need these gestures, body language, and so on. This is important how we perceive the information and how we understand the words, and as you said, that there are no conflicts or misunderstanding in the communications which can happen. And that's why this yes, learning more and more in this direction will be more than important.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, Darja. And I hope we inspired our listeners about connecting with others about mutually interesting topics or completely new topics. connect and have interesting conversations throughout the rest of the day and the week and months ahead.
Thank you,
Last
Shirin.
word.
Also from my side, sorry. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was very, very interesting. And I wish you and all the listeners to stay and that curiosity stay in the center of our life. Because as you said, learning is important and curiosity adding, it's also very important.
Thank you very much for celebrating curiosity with me in this era, Darja. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.